I pushed through the heavy oak doors at 9:42 a.m., briefcase in hand, charcoal suit pressed. The courtroom smelled like old wood and recycled air. My parents sat about 3 rows back on the plaintiff's side, next to their attorney, a man in his 50s wearing a tie that cost more than my monthly car payment. My mother saw me first. She leaned toward my father, whispered something, and they both did it. The eye roll. Small. Dismissive. The kind of gesture you'd give a teenager who showed up late to dinner. Their attorney caught it, smirked, and leaned back in his chair like this was already over. I didn't react. I walked past them, set my briefcase on the defendant's table, and sat down. The leather portfolio made a soft sound as I unlatched it. I pulled out a stack of documents, each one tabbed and labeled. The judge glanced up from his notes. His eyes moved from the paperwork in front of him to me, then back again. His expression didn't change much, but there was a pause, a shift. Curiosity, maybe, or just the reflex of someone who's seen a lot of cases and knows when the file doesn't match the person in front of him. I aligned my pens, opened my notepad, and waited. I'm the younger of two. My sister Cassandra is 36. I'm 33. Growing up, she was the one people noticed. Loud laugh, confident. She'd walk into a room and own it within 5 minutes. I was the kid in the corner with a book, answering questions only when asked directly. That difference mattered more than I realized at the time. My parents valued momentum, promotions, job titles you could explain at a dinner party. Cassandra worked in pharmaceutical sales, cleared 6 figures by 28, drove a leased BMW, posted vacation photos every other month. I went to state school, studied pre-law, kept my head down. When I graduated with honors, my parents came to the ceremony. They left halfway through the reception to drive 2 hours to Cassandra's company event. She'd been named regional sales lead. They said it was time sensitive, that it mattered. I didn't argue. I just noticed. Over the years, the pattern repeated. I took a job at a mid-sized firm after law school. My mom asked once what I did. I said estate and contract law. She said, "Oh, so like a paralegal?" I corrected her. She nodded and changed the subject. It wasn't malicious. It was disinterest. I stopped offering details. They stopped asking. Cassandra's life looked the way success is supposed to look. The car, the condo in a trendy neighborhood, an engagement to a guy who worked in private equity. My parents posted about her constantly. Cassandra's promotion, Cassandra's vacation, Cassandra's wedding planning. I'd see the photos while sitting in my small 1-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood that didn't have a brand. I drove a 2013 Toyota Camry. I didn't post on social media. I didn't buy new furniture or go to brunch spots that required reservations. At family gatherings, my aunt would ask Cassandra about her job and me about whether I was still doing okay. That phrase, still doing okay, was code. It meant, we're glad you're not struggling, but we don't expect much. My parents genuinely believed I was comfortable but unambitious, stable, boring, the responsible one who paid bills on time and didn't make waves. Cassandra was the star. I was the backup. They didn't say it out loud, but the allocation of attention made it clear. I wasn't resentful. I was observant. There's a difference. I knew what they saw. I also knew what they didn't. I passed the bar 9 years ago. I started as an associate at a firm that specialized in estate planning, contract disputes, and real property. The work was detailed, repetitive, and profitable. I kept my expenses low, paid off my student loans in 4.5 years, maxed my 401k contributions, bought a duplex when I was 28, rented out the top floor, lived in the bottom. The rental income covered 70% of the mortgage. By the time I turned 30, I had no debt and a portfolio that had crossed into 6 figures. Not extravagant, just disciplined. Last year, I made junior partner. My salary hit $128,000 base plus profit sharing. I kept driving the Camry, kept living in the duplex. My parents never asked about my work beyond surface pleasantries. They assumed I was still doing whatever vague office job I'd started with. I never corrected them. It didn't seem worth it. I wasn't hiding. I just wasn't performing. There's a difference. If they'd asked, I would have told them. They didn't ask. My grandmother died in April. She was 87, sharp until the end. She'd lived in the same house for 43 years, a 3-bedroom ranch on 2 acres in a suburb that had quietly appreciated over time. The property was worth about $435,000. She also had $88,000 in savings and a small brokerage account. Her will named me as executor. She'd updated it 2 years earlier with her estate attorney, a man named Richard Halloway, who I'd met twice. The will left the house and liquid assets to be divided equally between my mother and her brother, my Uncle Greg. There were smaller distributions to grandchildren, including me and Cassandra, $15,000 each. Standard stuff, notarized, witnessed, filed. My mother called me 3 days after the funeral. Her voice was tight. She asked why I was listed as executor. I said Grandma had asked me to do it, and I'd agreed. She said it didn't make sense, that I didn't have the experience, that it should have been her or Uncle Greg. I told her I'd been a practicing attorney for nearly a decade. There was a pause. Then she said, "You're a lawyer?" I confirmed. She hung up. 2 weeks later, I received a certified letter. My parents had hired an attorney and filed a petition to remove me as executor. The claim, undue influence, possible manipulation of an elderly woman, and concerns about my fitness to manage the estate. The filing requested a full accounting and redistribution of assets under court supervision. It also named me personally in the dispute. I read the petition twice. It was procedurally sound, but factually hollow. There was no evidence, just accusations dressed in legal language. I sat at my kitchen table for 20 minutes, staring at the document. My first instinct was to call my mother, to explain, to defend. Then I stopped. They'd gone to court without asking a single question. They hadn't texted, hadn't emailed. They'd assumed the worst and made it public record. I decided not to respond emotionally. I'd respond in the forum they'd chosen. I called my colleague, Daniel Ortiz, a senior partner who specialized in probate disputes. I asked if he'd co-counsel with me. He agreed. I told him I'd take the lead. He understood. I spent the next 6 days drafting a response brief. I included my bar number, my firm affiliation, and my credentials. I pulled the original will, the notarized affidavit from the drafting attorney, and medical records showing my grandmother's cognitive function 2 months before she died. I attached a complete financial accounting, every transaction since her death, every receipt, every bank statement. I filed a motion to dismiss with prejudice and requested attorney fees, even though I was representing myself. Principle mattered. The hearing was set for late June. I prepared like I was trying a case for a client. I reviewed every procedural rule. I organized exhibits into binders with color-coded tabs. I lined up witnesses, Richard Halloway, my grandmother's estate attorney, and Dr. Lawrence Kim, her primary care physician, who could speak to her mental clarity. I drafted questions. I scripted my opening statement. I ran through it twice in my living room. My parents' attorney, a man named Gerald Pritchard, had done minimal due diligence. I knew because the petition contained basic errors, incorrect dates, vague claims, no supporting documentation. That told me he'd taken the case at face value. Angry family member accuses younger relative of manipulation. Standard stuff. He probably assumed I'd be overwhelmed, that I'd settle or fold. On the morning of the hearing, I put on a navy suit, white blouse, and a pair of low heels I'd bought specifically for court appearances. I arrived 15 minutes early. I set up my materials. I reviewed my notes one last time. When the judge walked in, I stood. When he called the case, I was ready. Judge Paul Steinberg had been on the bench for 19 years. I'd appeared before him twice in the prior cases. He was fair, thorough, and intolerant of wasted time. Pritchard stood and presented his argument. He claimed I'd taken advantage of my grandmother's age, that I'd inserted myself into her estate planning, that I was unqualified to serve as executor, and that the will should be set aside pending a full investigation. Judge Steinberg looked at me. Ms. Rivera, you're representing yourself? I stood. Yes, Your Honor. For the record, I'm a member of the State Bar, number 739581, and currently junior partner at Callahan and Morse, where I specialize in estate and contract law. The judge's eyebrows lifted slightly. He looked down at the paperwork, then back at me. He nodded once. My mother's face went blank. My father leaned forward, squinting, like he was trying to process what I just said. Pritchard's expression didn't change, but his posture stiffened. I walked the judge through the rebuttal. I submitted the estate attorney's affidavit. I referenced the medical records. I pointed out procedural defects in the petition. I presented the financial accounting. Every dollar accounted for, every decision documented. Judge Steinberg asked clarifying questions. I answered each one. He turned to Pritchard. Do you have evidence of undue influence? Pritchard hesitated. Your Honor, the family has concerns. Do you have evidence? Not direct evidence at this time, but then I'm granting the motion to dismiss. Judge Steinberg delivered his ruling from the bench. The petition was dismissed with prejudice. My role as executor was affirmed. The estate would proceed as written. He added, almost as an afterthought, that the will had been drafted properly, executed with full legal clarity, and that my accounting was exemplary. He awarded me $3,400 in attorney fees. My parents would have to cover their own legal costs, approximately $11,500. Outside the courtroom, my parents didn't speak. They walked past me without making eye contact. My father's jaw was tight. My mother stared straight ahead. Cassandra called me that afternoon. She was angry. She demanded to know why I hadn't told anyone I was a lawyer, why I'd kept it a secret, why I'd made them look like fools. I texted back, I'll execute the will as written. If you have questions, put them in writing. Over the next 2 weeks, word spread through the extended family. Some reached out. My cousin Nathan sent a brief email asking if I was okay. My Aunt Carol called, apologized, said she didn't know the full story. Others stayed silent. A few doubled down, defending my parents. The family fractured quietly, the way families do when money and pride collide. Once the estate was settled, distributions made, accounts closed, property transferred, I sent a single email. I CC'd both my parents and Cassandra. I've executed the estate as instructed. All distributions are complete and documented. If you'd like to understand my career or my life, I'm open to that conversation, but only if you're genuinely curious, not just managing embarrassment. I won't defend my existence anymore. My mother responded 2 days later. She said I'd overreacted, that they were only trying to protect the family, that I'd made everything harder than it needed to be. My father didn't reply. Cassandra sent a short message. I still don't understand why you didn't just tell us. I didn't respond to any of them. I didn't block them. I just stopped engaging. I declined invitations to family events where I knew they'd be present. I didn't post about it. Didn't make announcements. I continued working, continued living in the duplex, continued running the same routes, eating at the same places, living the same life I'd built over the past decade. Cassandra reached out in November. She asked if we could meet for coffee. I said yes. We met at a place near her condo, minimalist decor, expensive espresso. She looked uncomfortable. She started with small talk, then eventually said, I didn't know you were a lawyer. I thought you were just, I don't know, working in an office somewhere. I looked at her. You never asked. She nodded slowly. I know. We talked for an hour, not about the lawsuit, not about the estate, about work, about what I actually did, about the duplex, the rental income, the years of building something stable. She seemed genuinely surprised, not hostile, just unaware. Over the next few months, we texted occasionally. She sent holiday greetings. I responded. It wasn't close, but it wasn't cold. My parents stayed distant. They sent birthday texts, short, formal, no acknowledgement of what had happened, no apology. I didn't push. I didn't need one. I used the inheritance from my grandmother to put a down payment on a second property, a small rental unit in a neighborhood that was starting to turn. I maxed out my investment accounts. I kept building. I used to think I needed them to see me, to recognize what I'd built, to be proud. I don't think that anymore. They rolled their eyes because they never looked closely enough to see who I'd become. Judge Steinberg was stunned because he read the file. That's the difference between assumption and attention. I didn't lose a family that day. I lost the illusion of one. What I gained was something more valuable, proof that I could stand in a room where I was dismissed and still hold my ground, that I didn't need their validation to know my own worth, that silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. You don't need to announce your worth. You just need to stop explaining it to people who've already decided not to listen.